Unbreakable self-discipline is not a personality trait. It's not something certain people are born with, and the rest of us just have to accept we missed out on. It's a set of decisions, repeated so many times, they stop feeling like decisions at all. And today we're going to take those decisions apart, one by one, until you can see exactly how they're built. Here's what nobody tells you about the most disciplined people you've ever met. It's not that they don't feel like quitting. They feel like quitting constantly. The difference is they stopped a long time ago treating "I don't feel like it" as useful information. They made the decision once and then they just kept it, over and over, on the mornings they didn't want to, on the days it would have been so much easier not to. The Stoics built an entire philosophy around this idea, long before anyone was writing books about habits or willpower or grit. They understood that discipline isn't about motivation, because motivation is unreliable. It shows up when it wants to, and disappears exactly when you need it most. What they built instead was something sturdier, a structure that works whether you feel like it or not. Today, 10 principles. Real people, real Stoics, real history. An emperor who ruled through plague and war and still forced himself out of bed every single morning. A slave who turned discipline into the only freedom he had left. A senator who trained himself to want less so that nothing could ever be used against him. Stick around for all 10, because the last one changes how you'll think about the other 9. And if you're serious about actually building this in your own life instead of just watching a video about it, hit subscribe now. This channel is where we do the real work, not the highlight reel. Think about the most disciplined person you personally know. Not a celebrity, not someone from a book, an actual person in your life. A parent maybe, a co-worker, someone who trains or writes or runs a business with a kind of steadiness that seems almost effortless from the outside. Now think about what you actually know of their mornings, not the version they post about, the real one, the alarm going off before it's light out, the argument they have with themselves in the first 90 seconds of being awake, the specific, boring, unremarkable choice they make in that argument over and over, thousands of times, until it stopped requiring a fight at all. That's the whole thing. That's everything this video is actually about, not inspiration. Repetition, examined closely enough that you can finally see how it's built. Let's get into it. Before Principle 1, I want to clear something up, because it trips almost everyone up before they even start. Discipline is not the same thing as intensity. You don't need to overhaul your entire life this week. You don't need a 5 a.m. wake-up and a cold plunge and a perfectly optimized morning routine by Thursday. Most people who try to build discipline that way burn out in about 9 days and conclude they're just not the type of person who has discipline. That's backwards. Discipline was never about how hard you go on day 1. It's about what survives on day 40 when it's raining, when you're tired, when nobody's watching, and there's absolutely no reward waiting for you at the end of it. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than almost anyone in history, and he understood it while ruling one of the largest empires that has ever existed. He wrote, in the middle of a military campaign, in a tent, exhausted, sick, grieving children he had buried. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being, not as an emperor, not as someone with a grand destiny, as a human being. That's the whole foundation, not motivation, just showing up, because that's the job, because that's what a human being who wants to be someone does. Here's the part that usually gets left out when people quote that line, though. Marcus Aurelius didn't write it once and move on cured. He wrote versions of it repeatedly, across years of journal entries, because the argument with himself never actually stopped. He was still having it in his 50s, still emperor, still by every account, one of the most disciplined men who ever lived. And the resistance was still showing up most mornings, right on schedule. That should be encouraging, not discouraging. It means the goal was never to eliminate the resistance. Nobody eliminates it, not even a Roman emperor with 2 decades of practice. The goal is just to keep losing the argument to your better judgment, instead of your worse one morning after morning, for long enough that it becomes who you are, instead of something you're constantly negotiating. 10 principles. Let's build this properly. Mindset 1. Decide before the moment arrives, not during it. Imagine a man named Terence, 51 years old, an accountant in St. Louis, who spent the better part of 2 decades trying and failing to build a consistent exercise habit. Every January, he'd start strong. By February, he'd be negotiating with himself, just skip today, you're tired, you'll make it up tomorrow. And by March, the whole thing had quietly dissolved, the way it always did. What finally worked for Terence had nothing to do with motivation, and honestly, nothing to do with exercise at all, at least not directly. A friend of his, someone who'd run marathons for years, told him something almost annoyingly simple. Stop deciding in the moment. The moment is rigged against you. You're tired, you're comfortable, your brain is actively working against the plan you made when you were thinking clearly. So don't let the moment decide. Decide the night before, when you're calm, and then just carry out the decision like it's already settled. Because it is. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this exact trap, the danger of letting yourself relitigate a decision every single morning as if it were still up for debate. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. He wasn't just talking about character in some abstract sense. He was talking about the exhausting habit of debating yourself constantly instead of just deciding once and moving forward. Terence stopped asking himself every morning whether he felt like running. He'd already decided the night before in writing that he was running at 6 a.m. The morning version of him didn't get a vote anymore. That one decision made in advance and never revisited is what finally got him through 18 straight months, longer than any January resolution had ever survived. Here's the first principle. Discipline collapses the moment you leave the decision open until the last second. Close it early. Decide when you're calm, and let that version of you, not the tired, resistant one, be the one who's actually in charge. Try this tonight if nothing else from this video. Before bed, write down one thing you're doing tomorrow and write it like it's already decided. Not, I'll try to, but I am doing this at this time. Then, in the morning, don't ask yourself how you feel about it. You already answered that question last night when you were thinking clearly. The morning version of you doesn't get to reopen a case that's already closed. Mindset 2. Master. The small thing and the big thing takes care of itself. Now meet a woman named Adaise, 39, a pharmacist in Houston, who spent years chasing what she called big discipline. Massive, ambitious goals that always fell apart within a few weeks because the goal itself was too large to actually act on any given Tuesday. What changed for her wasn't a bigger goal, it was a smaller one. Instead of get in shape, she picked one thing, making her bed every morning, nothing else, no exceptions, and did only that for 2 months. It sounds almost too small to matter. That was the point. Epictetus taught his students something that speaks directly to what Adaise eventually figured out on her own. First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. He didn't mean think really hard about your identity. He meant over and over in his teaching, start with the smallest possible unit of the thing, and get relentlessly good at that before you ever try to scale it up. Because here's what actually happens when you master something small. It stops being about the bed. It becomes proof every single morning that you are someone who does what they say they're going to do. And that proof compounds. Adaise started adding things, one at a time, only after the last one felt automatic. And 18 months later, the woman who couldn't sustain a single resolution for 3 weeks was training for her first half marathon. Here's the second principle. Stop trying to build a big discipline. Build one small, boring, unimpressive habit and let it prove to you what you're actually capable of before you ask for anything bigger. The mistake almost everyone makes here is picking a small habit that's actually still too big. Read every night instead of read 1 page. Meditate daily instead of sit for 60 seconds. Make it embarrassingly small. Small enough that skipping it would feel more ridiculous than doing it. That's not a lack of ambition. That's how you build a foundation strong enough to eventually hold the bigger thing you actually want. Mindset 3. The real enemy isn't laziness, it's desire. Imagine a man named Colton. 34, works in finance in Atlanta, and for years assumed his lack of discipline was a laziness problem. He wasn't lazy. He worked 60-hour weeks without complaint. What he actually struggled with was wanting things, wanting the extra drink, wanting to check his phone one more time instead of finishing the report. Wanting, constantly, in a way that had nothing to do with effort and everything to do with appetite. Epictetus split discipline into two very different disciplines, and most people only ever work on one of them. There's the discipline of action, doing the hard thing, and there's the discipline of desire, wanting the right things in the first place, so you're not spending all your willpower fighting your own appetite just to get to the starting line. He put it plainly. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Colton didn't need more discipline in the traditional sense. He needed fewer things pulling at him in the first place. He started, oddly, not with a productivity system, but with his environment, removing the apps, the snacks, the easy defaults that kept generating wants he then had to fight all day long. Here's the third principle, and it's the one people skip because it's less satisfying than grinding through willpower. You don't need more discipline to resist temptation. You need fewer temptations sitting there demanding to be resisted in the first place. Fix the wanting, and the doing gets a lot easier. There's a strange kind of pride people take in resisting temptation through sheer force of will over and over, day after day. It feels heroic. It's actually exhausting, and it's optional far more often than we admit. Every time you remove a temptation instead of steeling yourself against it, you're not cheating. You're just being smarter than the version of this fight most people insist on having the hard way. Mindset 4. Choose discomfort on purpose before life forces it on you. Now meet a woman named Ruth Ann. 62, recently widowed, and in the years after losing her husband, she noticed something about herself that unsettled her. How completely unprepared she was for hardship she hadn't chosen. Small inconveniences felt enormous. A cancelled flight ruined her week. She realized somewhere in her grief that she had spent decades avoiding discomfort so thoroughly that she had almost no tolerance left for it when it finally, inevitably, arrived on its own terms. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, did something his peers found bizarre. Periodically, on purpose, he would set aside a few days to live like he had nothing, sleeping on the floor, eating the plainest food available, wearing rough clothes, deliberately putting himself through minor hardship while he still had every comfort available to him. He explained exactly why in a letter to his friend Lucilius, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, and then you will ask yourself, is this the condition that I feared? He wasn't punishing himself, he was inoculating himself, proving in advance on his own terms that discomfort wasn't actually the catastrophe his mind had built it up to be. Ruth Ann started doing something similar, almost by accident. Cold showers at first, just to see if she could stand it. Then skipping a meal occasionally on purpose, just to remember what mild hunger actually felt like instead of fearing it from a distance. It sounds small, it rebuilt something in her that grief had exposed as missing. Here's the fourth principle. Don't wait for life to force discomfort on you and catch you completely unprepared. Choose small, deliberate discomfort now on your own terms, so the discomfort life eventually forces on you anyway doesn't own you the way it otherwise would. Notice something about Seneca's practice, though. He always came back to comfort afterward. He wasn't trying to live in permanent hardship. He was building a reference point, a proof that the worst version of a situation was survivable, so the fear of it would stop having so much control over him. That's the actual goal, not suffering for its own sake. Just enough exposure that discomfort stops being the thing that quietly runs your decisions from the shadows. Mindset 5. Burn the escape routes. Imagine a man named Devon, 29, trying to quit a habit that had quietly run his life for years and failing over and over in almost exactly the same way each time. He'd do well for a stretch and then, in a weak moment, tell himself, just this once, and the one time would become the whole pattern all over again. There's a story about Cato the Younger, the same senator famous for standing alone against Julius Caesar, who trained himself for hardship in a way his fellow Romans found genuinely strange. He would deliberately wear clothing that was out of fashion in public, specifically to feel the discomfort of being stared at and mocked, and to prove to himself, repeatedly, that the sting of other people's judgment wouldn't move him. He wasn't just building tolerance, he was removing his own escape routes, making it so there was no comfortable, socially acceptable middle ground he could retreat to when things got hard. Devon eventually did something similar with his own habit, not white-knuckling it, not just this once negotiating with himself in the moment. He removed the option entirely, deleted the accounts, told 2 close friends exactly what he was doing, so backing out quietly wasn't an option anymore. He didn't rely on willpower in the moment, because he, like Cato, understood that willpower in the moment is the least reliable resource a person has. He built a structure that didn't require it. Here's the 5th principle. Stop trying to out-willpower your weak moments. You will lose that fight eventually. Everybody does. Instead, remove the option before the weak moment arrives, the way Cato removed his own comfortable retreat from public judgment. Discipline isn't about being strong enough to resist the escape route. It's about not leaving one open in the first place. This is uncomfortable to hear if you've built your self-image around being someone with strong willpower, because it sounds like an admission of weakness. It isn't. It's just honesty about how willpower actually functions, as a limited, exhaustible resource, not a personality trait you either have or don't. The people who look like they have the most willpower are usually just the people who've gotten best at never needing very much of it. Mindset 6. Your why has to be bigger than your comfort. Now meet a woman named Beatrix, 46, a hospice nurse in Portland who has one of the most physically and emotionally demanding jobs imaginable, and yet somehow shows up, shift after shift, year after year, with a level of consistency that people 20 years younger than her can't seem to match in far easier circumstances. When asked about it once, she said something simple. It's not that the job gets easier, it's that her reason for doing it is bigger than any single hard day. She's not showing up because she feels like it. She's showing up because of what the work actually means to the people she's caring for, and that reason doesn't shrink just because she's tired. Marcus Aurelius ruled through a plague that killed a significant portion of his empire's population, and through wars that kept him away from home for years at a stretch, and he did it while chronically ill himself, by most historical accounts. What kept him going wasn't comfort. There wasn't any. It was duty, a sense of what he owed to the role he'd been given, bigger than any single miserable day on campaign. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That line only works if the way you're trying to get to actually matters to you. If your reason for building discipline is thin, I should probably exercise more, I guess. It will not survive a bad week. If your reason is thick enough, this is who I actually want to be. This is what I owe the people who depend on me. It survives almost anything. Here's the 6th principle. Comfort will always lose to a big enough reason, and discomfort will always win against a reason that was never really strong enough to begin with. Before you try to force more discipline into your life, make sure you actually know what it's for. If you're struggling right now to sustain something, don't immediately assume you need more grit. Ask a more honest question first. Is my reason for doing this actually big enough to survive a bad week? Sometimes the answer is yes, and you just need better systems. But sometimes the honest answer is that the goal was borrowed from somewhere else, from a trend, from someone else's life, from a version of you that doesn't fully exist yet, and no amount of discipline was ever going to make a thin reason carry a heavy habit. Mindset 7. Track it. Don't just feel it. Imagine a man named Oren, 58, a retired postal worker who spent years believing he was pretty consistent with the goals he set for himself, until his daughter, half joking, challenged him to actually write down every day for a month whether he'd done the thing he said he'd do. He agreed, mostly to prove her wrong. He did not prove her wrong. The written record showed something his memory had been quietly editing for years. He was consistent maybe half the time, not the 80 or 90% he'd have guessed if you'd asked him. Memory, it turns out, is generous to us in exactly the way we don't need it to be. Seneca practiced something specific every single evening, reviewing his own day in detail honestly before sleep. He described it to Lucilius. "When the light has been removed, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing over nothing. Not vague self-reflection, an actual accounting. Where did I do what I said I'd do, and where did I quietly let myself off the hook? Oren adopted a version of this. Nothing elaborate, just a single line each night. Done or not done, no explanations allowed. The explanations, he realized, were where he'd been lying to himself for years. Once the excuses weren't allowed on the page, his actual follow-through improved almost immediately, simply because he could no longer hide from himself the way his memory had been letting him. Here's the seventh principle. Your memory of your own discipline is not reliable, and it's not reliable in a very specific direction. It's generous to you exactly when you need it to be honest. Write it down. Let the record, not your recollection, tell you the truth. It doesn't need to be elaborate. A single word, most nights, done or not, is enough to end the guessing. What changes once you start tracking isn't just your accuracy about the past. It's your behavior in the present, because you know, at the end of the day, there's a page waiting that isn't going to let you round up. Mindset 8. Your environment is doing more work than your willpower. Now meet a woman named Selma, 33, trying for years to build a consistent writing practice around a full-time job and consistently failing for a reason she didn't fully understand until much later. She was trying to write in the one room of her apartment that was also where she watched television, scrolled her phone, and generally unwound. Same chair, same room. Two completely incompatible modes, competing for the exact same physical space. Epictetus taught something about this that gets overlooked because it sounds almost too practical to be philosophy. He warned his students repeatedly about underestimating the pull of their surroundings, telling them plainly that association with the wrong company, the wrong environment, could undo months of careful internal work almost instantly. He didn't believe willpower operated independently of context. He believed context was constantly, quietly working on you, whether you noticed it or not. Selma eventually moved her writing to a different corner of her apartment entirely. Nothing fancy, just a small desk that had one job and one job only. Within weeks, the resistance she'd been fighting for years dropped dramatically, not because her willpower improved, but because she'd stopped asking her willpower to do a job her environment had been actively working against the whole time. Here's the eighth principle. Stop assuming every failure of discipline is a failure of character. Sometimes it's a failure of environment, and environment is a far easier problem to fix than character. Change the room before you decide you need to become a different person. Look honestly at the last 3 times you broke a commitment to yourself. Ask what was actually around you in that moment, who you were with, what was in reach, what the space itself was inviting you to do. More often than people expect, the pattern isn't a character flaw at all. It's a room, a phone, a habit of location, quietly working against a decision you made somewhere else entirely. Mindset 9. Consistency beats intensity every single time. Imagine a man named Prentice, 42, a martial arts instructor in San Diego who has trained thousands of students over 2 decades and noticed the exact same pattern play out, almost without exception. The students who show up twice a week for years outlast, by an enormous margin, the ones who show up 5 days a week for a month and then vanish entirely. The intense ones almost always burn out, not because they lack discipline in some deep character sense, but because intensity that isn't sustainable was never actually discipline to begin with. It was just enthusiasm wearing discipline's clothes for a few weeks. The Greek word the Stoics used for disciplined practice was askesis, the same root that eventually gives us the word ascetic. It didn't mean occasional intense effort. It meant steady, repeated training, the way an athlete trains, over years, not weeks. Marcus Aurelius, describing the kind of person he was trying to become, wrote about doing the work like a Roman and a man, not heroically, not in dramatic bursts, but as an ongoing, unremarkable practice day after day that never asked to be noticed. Prentice tells new students something now, in their very first week, specifically to save them from the burnout he's watched. Destroy so many promising starts. Aim for the version of this you can still be doing in 5 years, not the version that impresses anyone this month. Here's the 9th principle. Intensity feels like discipline, but it's usually just motivation wearing a costume, and motivation always runs out. Real discipline is boring. It's the version of the habit small enough that you're still doing it long after the excitement wore off. If you're currently going hard at something, 5 days a week, an hour a day, everything you've got, ask yourself honestly whether you could still be doing this exact version of it in a year, tired, uninspired, on a random Wednesday in November. If the honest answer is no, you haven't built discipline yet. You've built a sprint. Scale it down now, on your own terms, before your body or your motivation does it for you. Mindset 10. Discipline isn't the opposite of freedom, it's the only way to it. Finally, there is a man named Augustine, 69 years old, and everything in this video has been quietly building toward what his life looks like now, because Augustine spent nearly 50 years practicing every principle we've just walked through, without ever having a name for most of them. For most of his life, people around him assumed his discipline was restrictive, that all the routines, the early mornings, the things he said no to, added up to a smaller, more limited life than the one his friends were living, chasing whatever felt good in the moment. What those friends never saw, because it's invisible from the outside, was what all of that discipline eventually bought him. Health in his 60s that most of his peers had long since lost. A body that still does what he asks of it. A mind that isn't at the mercy of every passing craving or mood. Relationships built on decades of actually following through, not just meaning to. Epictetus, the man who spent the first half of his life legally owned by another human being, left behind the line that captures exactly what Augustine eventually discovered on the other side of 50 years of practice. No man is free who is not master of himself. That's the whole thing, in one sentence. People treat discipline like a cage. It's not a cage, it's the only thing that has ever actually produced freedom. The freedom to trust yourself, the freedom to not be at the mercy of every impulse that shows up demanding your attention, the freedom to become, deliberately, the person you actually want to be instead of whoever your weakest moments happen to leave behind. Here's the 10th and final principle, and it's the one that reframes everything before it. Discipline was never the opposite of the good life. It was always the price of admission to it. Think about every genuinely free person you've ever admired. Free with their time, free from the grip of habits they didn't choose, free to actually do the things they say matter to them. Not one of them got there by accident. Every single one paid for that freedom in advance, in ordinary, unremarkable installments, on days nobody was watching and no one was going to applaud. That's not the cost of a smaller life. That's the cost of the only kind of life that was ever actually going to be yours. We started today with a simple claim that unbreakable self-discipline isn't a personality trait. It's a set of decisions repeated so many times they stop feeling like decisions at all. 10 principles, and by now you've got the whole structure. Decide before the moment arrives so the tired, resistant version of you doesn't get a vote. Master the small thing first and let it prove what you're capable of. Fix your wanting, not just your willpower. Choose discomfort on your own terms before life forces it on you unprepared. Remove your escape routes instead of trying to out-willpower them. Make sure your reason is bigger than your comfort. Track your actual behavior because your memory is lying to you in the friendliest possible way. Fix your environment before you decide you need to become a different person. Choose consistency over intensity every single time. And understand, finally, that all of it, every single principle, was never about restriction. It was about freedom, the only kind that actually holds up. Marcus Aurelius, writing to no one but himself in a tent, exhausted, still getting up before dawn to do the work anyway, left this behind. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Unbreakable discipline isn't built on the days you feel inspired. Those days take care of themselves. It's built on the ordinary Tuesday, the one nobody's watching. When you do the thing anyway simply because you already decided you would, you don't need to apply all 10 principles starting tomorrow. That's not how any of this actually works. And honestly, trying to do that is how most people end up right back where they started, exhausted by week 2. Pick one. The one that made something in you go quiet while you were listening. The one that felt like it was speaking directly to whatever you've been avoiding fixing about yourself. Start there. Let it be small, let it be boring, and let it run for a month before you add anything else on top of it. Terence didn't fix his whole life in a week. Neither did Adès or Ruthan or Augustine. Every single person in this video built what they built one unremarkable decision at a time, repeated so many times it eventually stopped being a decision and just became who they were. That's available to you too. It was always available to you. It just required exactly what it's always required, showing up again tomorrow, whether you feel like it or not. If this gave you something you can actually use, don't just let it disappear into your watch history. Subscribe so the next one finds you, and tell me in the comments which principle you're starting with today. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps this find the next person who needs to hear it. Take care of your mind. The world will take care of itself. Until next time.